by McKenna! Lovely cushion header. De Gea! What a head, son! What a head! Aguero!
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Red Devils Talk. My name is Hader and I'm your host as usual today. I've got a fantastic cast with me, the usuals, but Marc's joining us again. Let's start off with Pauly in the bottom left-hand corner. How are you doing today, mate?
Good. Another week, some more headlines and people overreacting to headlines every single day as if we thought that this story was changing.
Oh, you'll have your time to say it, Pauly, and I'm sure the rest of the boys are going to attack you. But in the bottom right-hand corner is my good friend Joe. We've just come off a good podcast, haven't we? And how are you doing? I don't know why I'm asking you because I don't already know you're doing pretty annoyed, aren't you? Frustrated at the whole situation. As Pauly said, overreacting, apparently.
Yeah, no, well, call it over. I don't want to say I'm overreacting. I found myself I just thought this would be a massive summer for United, put it that way, in terms of investment, in terms of doing business well. All the signs were good last year, and it hasn't really sort of taken off like that. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe a little bit of false hope that I'm now being a victim of.
So the hope always kills, doesn't it, Ciaran?
Yeah, that's what kills, because especially with the transfer window, because you have all these expectations at the start of the window, and then as normal, it doesn't tend to work out the way you hope it would. You would think that this year would be a little bit different with the kind of progression in the team. But again, we will discuss why that hasn't happened. We've spoken about it a lot. So it's disappointing and kind of annoying, but again, we'll get to that.
Absolutely. And Marc, you're back on the podcast and you found your United shirt. So congratulations.
He's actually a fan.
He's actually
Can I hear you?
Can you hear us, Marc? Marc, you're on mute again, mate.
Shit.
Yeah, right. We'll get the mic wrong. There we go.
I'm having an absolute mare today.
What's on this United shirt and now he can't speak?
Marc, did you get the brief, mate? No United shirt this week.
You want to hear what I said about yours just then? But,
oh, mate.
So I found my shirts there. I've still got one missing actually, so I've got to try and find that. I've proven now that I'm a Man United fan. But thanks for having me back.
No problem at all. And to all the listeners, make sure you smash that like button and that subscribe button. Let's get this video out. This is going to be the weekly Man United show. Red Devils Talk with some of the best United fans on Twitter and some of the best United fans I've ever met. This is going to go big. This is going to be exciting. This is going to be fun. So make sure you're hitting that like button. Let's go to the first topic, guys, because we only got an hour today. So there's a lot to pack in. I'm going to start with you, Pauly, because I want to ask you your view, because I think you're probably one of the more relaxed and probably more positive United fans out there. And it is nice to have that sort of dose of positivity because, some days you get up and it's just frustrating. As Joe said, you thought this would be a different sort of summer. But look, we're less than a week away from the Palace game. One player in the door. What sort of shape do you think United are coming into this new season? Because some people think we're in terrible shape. I wouldn't say that. I think we're in decent shape. But my concerns are with that squad depth, one injury to one of the forwards or even the midfielders. Now we've got Van der Beek. But if Matic gets injured or even the centre-back, I think we've got serious problems.
I'd like to thank you for answering the question for me. That's exactly what we're saying is we're in fine shape. I think we got tired at the end of the year and people forget how good we were when we had the full squad. Coming out of the lockdown, we were unbelievable. We were unstoppable. And then we didn't rotate the squad as best we could. And we got tired. We struggled in some games. Shaw's injury killed us. And that kind of, the West Ham match and the Leicester match weren't as dominant as we wanted. And people forget that. And that bled into the Europa League where we actually outplayed Sevilla. We just didn't put the ball in the net. And Sevilla did. We made 2 mistakes at the back. And those 2 mistakes ended up in our own goal. When we have a full team, we are really, really good. We have not lost yet when we have, in the Premier League, we have not lost when we have Paul Pogba, Bruno Fernandes, Anthony Martial, and Marcus Rashford on the pitch. when we have only two of those guys on the pitch. We played half the season with only two of those players, Martial and Rashford, or Rashford and Pogba, or Martial and Bruno. We won 10 of the 19 games. We only lost, I think, 2 or 3 of them. We played almost a fifth of the season with only one of those guys. And that was where our struggles were, when we only had one of those guys available, whether it's because Martial was hurt or Rashford was hurt. So even if we pick up an injury to one or two of them, we should be fine. And adding Van de Beek really helps that out in terms of now all of a sudden, instead of having 4 guys to go between, we have 5 guys. If we have 2 or 3 of those guys, we should be fine. So even if we did not add another player, top 4 is, I'm not going to say a lock, but I would consider us favorites for that. And there's still 3 weeks to go in this transfer market. We can add somebody. And although it's not ideal to have somebody come in late, anything like that would boost the squad.
Yeah, you make some very fair points. I do agree with the idea. I know we spoke about it today, but people are coming out with top 6 predictions and saying, oh, United are going to finish 6th. It's quite ludicrous because United, as you said, they finished very, very, very well. I think when you look at the way we were in the restart, we were the best side around. We played some scintillating football. We were scoring goals left, right, and centre. And you really looked at this squad and you thought, wow, the first time in 7 years, we look like we've got a direction we're going in. There's a style of play, very impressive. And I think you're right, people do forget that. People suddenly think that now Arsenal, they've signed 1 player, I believe, and now suddenly Arsenal are going to overtake us. I don't think so. Spurs, we saw, looked atrocious. Everton might have bought well, but, Everton, this one game, and Spurs looked awful. So I think people need to relax there. But Joe, my question to you is, I think where I disagree with Pauly is that I agree with him that we have a first 11 which can compete with anyone. But the problem is that you can't rely on those those 11 to 14 players. I think United need 15, 16, 17, 18 players who are good enough to replace the first team players.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Pauly said there, when we had our full strength team together, or even when we had close to it, we did pretty well last season. But as soon as you take 2 or 3 of them out in key positions, it is worrying. And it's one of them tough things, isn't it, about the argument about when you're buying players, do you want to buy for squad depth, or actually do you want to buy for them to come straight into the first 11? And then ultimately, for me, that improves your squad depth. That's the way United should be doing it. It should be buying players that can come in and impact the team. And then as a result, your squad will improve, if you know what I mean. So I do think, like Pauly said, I think when we can put our first 11 out, if we get the tactics right, we're a match for anyone. You've only got to look at the big teams, the teams that are meant to be tactically the best in the league last season, the likes of City, Chelsea. We gave them good games. We beat them teams multiple times. But like you said, the drop-off from the first team to the bench is quite alarming. And maybe in midfield we've addressed that with Van de Beek, But as we talked about on the pod earlier, if Greenwood or Rashford get injured, you're looking at Dan James, and that's where we haven't addressed it. And even with the defence, I mean, if Maguire and Lindelof got injured, you're putting a lot of pressure on players that are not only maybe not good enough, but players that haven't even played that often in the last 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, spot on. I couldn't agree more with that. And Ciaran, I'm going to ask you, with this current squad, if we were going to go into this squad for the rest of the season, is it good enough to finish in the top 4? And is it good enough to go out of the group stages in the Champions League and win a domestic trophy? Because we've seen that when we have more than 1 game a week for a prolonged period, which will happen at some stage with the season being condensed, I believe, into an extra month's play into the season.
I think it's the entire season. Is more
the entire season.
Like we play in the League Cup next week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and with the lack of rest that we've had, and we saw Bruno was absolutely knackered by the end. You can't overplay him. We've seen that what a quality player he is, and people forget how good he is, and they're just judging him because a modern fan is the prisoner of the moment. Suddenly now that Bruno wasn't very good, but he had a great game the other day, so now he's amazing. It's just typical modern fan. But is the squad good enough to go and compete on those 4 fronts?
It's difficult to think that you can be successful on all 4 fronts when you don't have the squad depth that really the manager needs. You've seen it just after lockdown. Ollie trusts the first team. And then after that, he's looking on the bench. And when there's a game that's close, he looks around and he doesn't see really anyone that he can bring on that he trusts. I think where he may see that is in defense, because he does seem to, and you've seen it with Axel Tuanzebe, who's come back and he's apparently back fit and ready to play. So Solskjaer was prepared to play him in some big games last year before he got injured. So if he is able to prove his fitness, I don't think he'd have a problem bringing him in. You've seen what he said about Ted Mengi, that even though he's young, that he's a player that he is thought has played very well. And even the fact that he's not involved in the under-23s game tonight makes you think that he's probably part of the first team squad. But then you look up into your midfield and your attacking positions, which really is the issue, because really when we look at bringing players on, a lot of the time is when maybe it's 0-0, we're down a goal, and we're trying to get a goal or two back. And really when you start Rashford, Martial, Pogba, Greenwood, Bruno, and we haven't scored, and he looks to the bench, there's not really anybody that's there to change it. Now, Van de Beek comes in, and you were mentioned before with Matic, if he got injured. Well, I think he can play that role if you need him to. The problem is, I think there's not enough in that attacking area to be able to compete in all fronts. It might be one of those that you might have to sacrifice one or two of the cups. If you get through in the Champions League, let's say we don't get like a group of death, and we get through and there's a winnable enough fixture in the last 16, you might see us have to maybe risk whether it's the League Cup at the time or the FA Cup. Because again, if you don't have the full squad, it's very difficult. I guess the only difference this year is that while the transfer window's over in October, it's back open again in January. So you're not waiting quite as long. It's basically, a month and a half less than normal. I still think that one or two players will come in. It might not be the high-profile players that we all want. I know everybody's hoping for Jadon Sancho. Like you said before, Hader, I think the longer this goes on, the less likely it is, because at the end of the day, Dortmund are going to need to get a replacement in. And if they don't have enough time, they're not going to sell Sancho, because to them, they can sell him next year and there'll be more people, or there'll be more teams in for him. So they're not going to worry about losing value. So I think the longer this goes on, the less likely we have Sancho. But I think we do need to be able to bring some reinforcements in up front in order to be able to compete on all those levels. If not, I think you'll find that the squad will get very tired very quickly again.
Yeah, look, it's what we saw last season, wasn't it? And look, I wouldn't even deny the fact that, as Pauly said, that first 11 is very good. You're looking at now that midfield. When you look at that Matic, Pogba, Bruno midfield, it's very good. When you look at that front three, they scored a lot of goals, and they're going to get better. Remember, Greenwood, Martial, and Rashford will get better, and that's a positive as well. Look, guys, this is
something.
Quickly.
I think it's a little naive to think that we can't compete in all four competitions with this squad. You look at what we had in the League Cup last year. We did that without Pogba and without Bruno Fernandes, obviously, and we went to the semifinal. Most of the games in the FA Cup, we didn't have a full strength squad, and we still survived all those games. It's about lengthening the depth of your squad. If you play Jesse Lingard with Andreas Pereira and Juan Mata and Odion Igalo, it's not going to look good. But if you play Jesse Lingard off on the right with your other good players, you give Mason Greenwood that 90-minute break, and so-and-so, and rotating the squad like that. So, and for the most part, the same way that we have this crunch of games, everybody else has that crunch of games too. So, if we were to draw Leicester in the League Cup, they might be looking to rotate their squad as well. So it's a question of if we make 4 or 5 changes, are our reserves there better than the 4 or 5 Leicester reserves that they're going to throw out? So it's naive to say that we can't compete. It like most cups, it depends on the draw, but if we get a bad draw, then it'll be difficult, but we can easily get an easy draw like we got last year. It really depends on how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, look, where I sit on it quickly, Ciaran, let's go to Marc first, and then I'll let you have your say. Look, where I sit on this, though, Pauly, I'll be honest with you, is I not being rude, but I don't really care what anyone else's squad's in shape. We've got to care about Man United. We shouldn't be saying, oh, well, so and so aren't as good, so it's okay, but we're better. No, we're Man United. We need to be up there with the depths that City have got, which Chelsea have started to develop. I know you probably don't think not all Chelsea signs are good, but they've given Lampard options, and that's the key. And so for me, I'm not really looking around at the sort of. I know what you're trying to say. I agree. This squad can compete on all four fronts, but I don't think it can win. It can win, for example, a Premier League, an FA Cup, whilst also trying to go far in the Champions League and trying to get top four in the Premier League and challenge. So look, Marc, I'm going to ask you where you're sitting on this, and then I'll also ask you your predictions on where we finish, and I'll go around and ask the boys as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a disappointing day, isn't it? You hit the nail on the head early, really. This was our opportunity to try and do something. Hopefully they had a bit more belief, and only they could see that the mentality had changed and all this. So, perhaps it could have changed their way of thinking and really sort of proven that we want to be competitive. Disappointing. I'm going to be optimistic and hope that I think Sancho will still come in. But we will see on the last day. Anyway, I agree with Pauly and the rest of you, really, only because I do think it would be a struggle to compete on all fronts. I think that, we've seen how our first team is and how good they are, but there still isn't squad depth. The only thing I will say is we do have replacements that can subsidise one of the forwards. I know that it's James, I know it's Lingard and that sort of thing. But I think our main problem is midfield. And if we were to lose one of Bruno or Pogba, we could potentially play Van der Beek instead. If we were to lose Matic, we could play Van der Beek. And do you know what I mean? So I feel that by bringing in Van der Beek, we might be better in midfield. And that goes with the defence as well. I still think that whilst it would be great to get Upamecano or someone else, we still have a quite healthy, back four. If Maguire gets injured, then that could be a major problem. But, Lindelof is okay. He does have some great moments, even though he's prone to errors. I appreciate, obviously, the left back could be a bit of a concern, but I think the midfield would have been a harder thing, and I think we've got that player in perhaps to maybe cover some of those roles.
Where do you think we finish prediction wise? I think, look, I'm going to say it, and I think we can finish third. I honestly think there's quality in the squad. I think people are just complaining because we haven't got Sancho. Look, I want to get Sancho as much as anyone. I want quality in, but I'm also not going to sleep on the quality we do have in that first 11 because they have shown that they can do it. So where are United finishing for you next season in the league?
Based on the team now?
Yeah.
I'd like to say in the top four. I think, I'm not saying it's a given, but I think if we have a bit of luck go our way, then I'd like to think we'd finish in the top fourth. Okay,
brilliant. Joe, I'm going to ask you, where are we finishing in the league next season, this season even?
Well, to coin a famous phrase, I don't think we'll be the best team in the league, but we'll be in the top one. No, I don't think we'll be top one. No, I think, I can see, because having sort of looked at the other teams who are chasers, yes, I think Arsenal have improved, and I think not only have they improved their squad, but they've improved tactically. So, to be honest with you, it might be a bit of a wild card, but if we're going to finish third or fourth this season, they are the team that I'm actually most concerned about taking our place. I don't think Tottenham have done enough in the window to jump into that top four. I don't think, even though Everton have done good business and they looked decent the other day, over a course of a season, there's a long way to go. If a couple of those players get injured, their squad, the other day they took, was it James Rodriguez off or Decore off, and they replaced him with Sigurdsson. And I think, Sigurdsson, people think he's a decent player, but actually, I think when you see that Everton midfield the other day, it just shows you that Sigurdsson's a bit of a drop off. The work rate's not going to be there. If you're going to have to play Sigurdsson in the middle of the park for a sustainable amount of games, then Everton are going to struggle there. He's okay to come on and play one or two games here and there, I think. So I don't think that a team below us have done enough to take our place, and that's not really what we should be saying. We should be saying we've kicked on to stay away from those teams. And actually, progress for me this season with United wouldn't necessarily be fourth, third, second, or third. It's about getting closer to the people that were above us last year. So finishing 30 odd points behind Liverpool are unacceptable. Finishing 19 or whatever it was behind Man City, not good enough. So I think we'll be in that third, fourth position again. But actually, what we should have been doing is, progressing this year to a point where we weren't only in that top four, but we maybe half the gap to Liverpool. So finished 10, 15 points behind them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Pauly, what are you saying about our chances next season?
I like them. I think ultimately this comes down to really a lot of it comes down to Solskjaer, and it's not about the tactics or anything. Like, he proved he's got a style of play last year, and he just needs talented players to see it out. He proved he has the tactics to go up against the best managers and beat them. It's about the one thing he has not proven, and that is being able to rotate the squad. And if he can elongate this squad, as in, playing, finding a place to put McTominay in next to Pogba and Bruno so that, we can compensate for the fact that we don't have Matic in the team and we still get a win that day. And you find a day to rest Bruno and put somebody else in there, and the rest of your Martials and your Rashfords step up and compensate for the lack of Bruno, as opposed to, putting in James Pereira, Mata, Igalo at the same time and relying on them. Like, there's a difference between putting Dan James out there along with the best players and having him play a role than asking Dan James to carry the team. And if we can find that balance, or if Solskjaer can find that balance, we will go very far. I think we're easily right up. I agree with you, Hater, that we shouldn't be looking at other teams and saying, well, they're not that good. And unfortunately, that's not the reality that we live in right now. I hope that we get back to the day where it's Manchester United, we are the best no matter whatever team we put out. But right now, you look at the other teams and you just say, every problem that you look at us, whether it's depth or this or that, like Tottenham, Arsenal, they have the same problems. And I think talent-wise, if we stay remotely healthy, we are so far superior to them.
Yeah, well said. And I think something I do want to say is that too many United fans have this ridiculous notion. Oh, look, we all know that we've got an absolutely incredible club. There's not many clubs in the world. There's only one Man United. But this notion that we, Man United, has to be this, or players have to want to come to us. You have to look at reality. We have to accept there are other teams that are attractive prospects. There are other teams that are having their cycle of glory, that we have to accept that. But what we should always hope for and strive for, yes, we want to challenge for trophies, but we should always be playing football in the right way. There should be a plan in place. We should be looking to improve. So Ciaran, I'm going to ask you, I know you wanted to say something earlier, so tell the listeners about that. And also, where do you think United are going to finish?
Okay, from what I think it was when Pauly was saying about what was it? Oh, it was about how we should be able to compete on all fronts because of the squad. We did it last year, but when we saw it last year, we started losing games in the league that we shouldn't have lost. At the end of the day, and I agree to a certain extent, like, Solskjaer has to be able to rotate the squad. He can't be playing the same 11 every single week, because it's not going to work. Even if it's you take one player out here and there, give them a bit of time. Even if it's you're not playing Pogba for an hour of a game and you're playing Van de Beek, and then you bring him on, at least you're saving him for a little bit. You can't have the same team playing 90 minutes. So to that extent, I completely agree with what he said. But where I disagree was when we compare it to last year, because last year we saw the performances dip. No matter whether we were playing in the FA Cup, the League Cup, really we only saw consistent performances after January. And that's when we started getting our players back. We started getting Martial playing week in, week out. We got Bruno in, that helped, obviously. But really the only player that's probably consistent throughout when he was playing last year was probably the likes of Fred. And you could probably say Aaron Wan-Bissaka. But if you don't have a full team doing that, and the one thing that Fergie did so well was he was able to use his squad, even though you would look at the team that he would put out against, whether it was in the Premier League, FA Cup, and you were like, what's he doing today? And he'd still come away with the victory. So I think where Pauly's right is that Solskjaer needs to improve on his squad management, because the one thing I would say he's struggled with, we see it in game to game, his substitutions at times, it's too late a lot of the time, it's the wrong player. So it's something that he really needs to work on. It's really the only thing that I put a big fault at him, because you've seen his player development has been excellent. He's, like Pauly said, is that we have this style of play that I think we can all enjoy again. Like, it's probably been since Fergie that we've actually enjoyed watching Manchester United, because it's not been boring. So I think that's what we need to go on now. And I think he's still a young manager, so he can improve. It's always difficult when you're on the big stage to do that, but he does have the time because he has the backing from the fan base. If he was like Mourinho or Van Gaal, where the fans were getting annoyed by how the team was playing, I think that'd be a little bit more difficult. In terms of what I think for the upcoming season, I've said it before, I think we're going to come third. For me, the top four are way ahead of the rest of the teams. I thought that Spurs would probably come fifth, and you look at them yesterday and they're atrocious. It didn't look like a team that could even compete for the top four. Well, they looked decent defensively. They didn't show anything going forward. It was, what was it? I remember talking to a few people about 60, 70 minutes into the game, and I don't think Harry Kane had a touch in the box. And you're not going to be, when your best player isn't getting his chances in front of goal, you're not going to win many games. I see Everton, where they played an excellent game, but I don't see them being able to keep that up for a full season. Arsenal, again, they've only brought in one player. While their style of play is good, I still expect periods of time where they're going to lose to some of the smaller teams, because I still don't like the mentality of that team. Even though it seems like it may have adjusted a little bit, I don't think that they have that kind of winning mentality yet. And really, the likes of Wolves, I think, could be the closest ones, because they seem to have basically started off where they kind of left the season last year. They played very well. And obviously today, Sheffield United didn't play that well. So I think when you look at Liverpool, Man City, United and Chelsea, I think they're going. I think Chelsea and United will separate themselves from 5th, 6th. But I think whether United come 3rd or 4th, I think it all depends on Chelsea, because, again, I've said this a million times, it's very hard to integrate 7 or 8 players into a new squad, especially if you don't get rid of other players, because, again, if something doesn't work out, it will cause a divide in the squad. And with a young manager in Frank Lampard, where there's been players that aren't going to have any affiliation to Chelsea, so they won't have a particular affiliation or love for Lampard like some of the young players might do. So if anything goes wrong, I feel like it could be one of those that it could spiral for Chelsea if they go through a bad patch this season.
Yeah, well said. And just a little breaking news, guys. That our top target, Jadon Sancho, apparently has just scored, as Pauly has informed us. And yes, he is starting. So look, that doesn't mean he's not coming. So that's someone that asked me now. But a few bit of other news. Fabrizio Romano has said on Reguilon that the talks are ongoing tonight, and sources in Spain are saying it's agreed. So that would be a phenomenal signing, and I'd be very happy with that. Yeah. And our great friend Ronan Murphy has tweeted about Sancho staying. Me and Joe spoke to him early on in the window, and he said that it was 80-20 in favor of him joining United. So let's see what happens. But anyway, let's move on to United's transfer strategy. Make sure all you listeners smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. Red Devils Talk will be on every single week. Some of the best United fans on Twitter. And let's move on to the next topic. And that's United's transfer strategy, Pauly. This one we might get some hot debates. But look, me and you agree on a lot of things. I think we can say that. You know, fundamentally, we both agree on a lot of things that to United. I think where we massively disagree, I think, is the ownership. I think that's probably where we disagree. And probably the way that the business is done. I think for me, I'm on the side of I want us to be more efficient. I want us to, well, we both agree on a director of football. I think that's very important. But I want us to be much more efficient and quicker in the market with our targets. I don't want us to be spending the whole summer going on and with sagas, and talk to me about what you think is going to happen with Jadon Sancho, because you have got a very strong view on, I guess, a theory which you believe wholeheartedly, and talk to me about your opinion on United's transfer strategy.
Yeah, I still think Jadon Sancho is going to come. Do I think as strongly that he's going to be here by the time we play Crystal Palace? No, but I think, and that's a problem. I do think that's a problem, and I do think that should have been done earlier, but I do ultimately think he's going to come. What we know is that he is Solskjaer's number one target. We've known that for a year and a half now. We have known that that basically United thought about going in for him last year, or, there were rumors that they did, but basically it was wait till next year. We know he wants to come. We know Dortmund have set a price, and that's been that. It's everything varies daily because the newspapers need to get you to click on their thing, and they need you to sell newspapers, and they have to just, so once you remove yourself from the day to day of just let's wait until news, more news breaks. If you remove yourself from every story in the Daily Mail and the Mirror and this, it's those headlines are just designed to get you wound up. I still think it's going to happen. The Woodward and the Glazers know that at this point you can't let it drag into this point of the summer and not deliver him, especially when your manager has earned every last ability to say, why, not only is he my number one target, but this is exactly how he fits in. Like, it's not just, Mourinho coming out there and saying, I wanted Zlatan last year and now I want Lukaku. It's more of, I have filled in these areas of the team. What we are missing is a player who fits this profile. And this is the player that I think fits the profile. And it's, 100% fit. And not only that, but every other player that you have told us about and told us why they will fit into your team has worked out exactly the way you've told us that. So it needs to go on. Hader and Marc, we were on the All for United transfer show with Joe last week, and we all agreed, or I don't know if we fully agreed, but it was said that Dortmund are waiting for Sancho to push this deal through by submitting a transfer request because they want to be able to turn it around and put it on him. Be like, we didn't want to sell the guy, but the player, and basically blame Sancho. And I have always said this is starting to feel like exactly how Ousmane Dembele felt. He started in Dortmund's German Super Cup match, their first match of the season. He started. So I knew that they were going to be playing today. And I said, Sancho will probably be in the 11 for that game. He is. He has already scored 15 minutes into the game. Dortmund are going to, this way Dortmund can say he's part of our plans. You see this. And make him force the move through. And once he does that, the move will happen. And Dortmund will turn around and say, this is because of the player. And, as a background, like, I have been watching Borussia Dortmund for 6 or 7 years now. I actually have a Jadon Sancho Borussia Dortmund shirt from when he first broke into the team. I was like, wow, this kid's amazing, before he was ever linked to United. Like, I know their playbook, and this is just playing out exactly the way they do it. I don't think they need to bring in a replacement because they are big on replacing from within, and they've been doing that. They've been working youngsters in since January. They've been preparing for his exit, and I think ultimately, if they don't let him go, it becomes a big problem for them, because part of the reason that they're able to sign players like Erling Haaland and Giovanni Reina, not Giovanni, that's the replacement, Jude Bellingham, is because they're able to say, you come here, we will give you those first team opportunities. And when you want to leave, we will not stand in your way. And if they stand in Jadon Sancho's way over 10 million or something like that, that's going to be a problem for them in the future.
You make some good points, but Joe, I want to come to you. But yeah, okay, fine. United probably needs Sancho to push it through, but what about the rest of the team? Because we're looking at, for example, Reguilon looks like he might be close to signing. There's Thiago available. United could have wrapped up deals before. Why is it that every single summer we have this situation? Or why can't United conduct their business in an efficient way?
It's a million got a question, that one, though, isn't it, really? I wish I had the answer, because if I had the answer, then, I'd probably put that forward to the club and suggest that they do that. I mean, they probably know how to do it as well, but they're just so resistant. We just seem a club a lot of the time, with transfer strategy and a lot of other things, the way we work as a club, we just seem quite resistant to change, don't we? We're quite old-fashioned in our values. We were lucky to have a manager for 26 years who, did things the right way, sort of 27 years. So he did everything at the club. He controlled everything, from the top down. And, I think now you're seeing more and more clubs going with the director of football and sporting director. We've talked about that before. But my biggest issue with the club is they just seem to sort of resist change, and it's really frustrating because everyone can see what they need to do. We can see the changes they need to make, both with transfer strategy and other things, but yet they just seem resistant to do it. And I don't know if it's a money thing. I don't know if it's their idea, their level of ambition, but whatever it is, I'm just totally frustrated by it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've literally touched on everything that I think about the situation. We know there is some money problems, but Marc, I mean, every single year, and I think everyone here agrees a director of football is needed, because look, this is how I think about it. If Solskjaer left tomorrow, I honestly think all the good work and the plans would go with him, and then the next manager has to come in, and the next manager is implementing something completely different, because United haven't caught on that actually, you know what, United's way of playing football is attacking football, promoting from within, buying upcoming stars or a few stars, sprinkling that in with the talent from the academy, fast wingers, creativity, strikers, connection with the fans. Solskjaer's bringing that slowly, but he knows the values. But, we've seen with our previous three managers, each of them were polar opposites. You had Moyes, who played a more defensive style, then to a possession-based game, and then you went to another manager who wants to use the checkbook, and his ways are proven, but it's not the sort of football that United fans want to see. So, United's transfer strategy, okay, yes, they're buying players better now, but the biggest problem surely is that director of football.
Yeah, we do definitely need one of them. I think what Ollie's done is very, very good, and you can see the changes, you can see the players he's bringing in. They do seem to have the right mentality, and it'd be an awful waste of time if he is to go. I have seen in a few places that perhaps he might take a more director of football role. I can't remember where I read that, and it was a little while ago. But obviously he doesn't want to lose the management job, and I think it would be very difficult for him to go from that to a director, no hard feelings sort of thing. It would, yeah, I mean, it is very frustrating, and I agree with what Joe said. I think it was Joe. We do seem to be, very in the past with regards to our dealings, and we don't really like to change things. I saw that, I think you tweeted it as well, Hader, the amount of money that's been brought in and how much has actually gone into the club and to the Glazers, and obviously that is a big problem. So I don't think we're ever going to get past this, trying to go into a new era of transfers if they're unwilling to spend the money, Yeah, it'd be great to get one in. I know that obviously Van der Sar was touted for it. He would be wonderful. Obviously, he helps us with the Van der Beek deal. And Rio would be another good one, but we'll have to wait and see with that, I think. Yeah,
well said. And look, Ciaran, I'm going to ask you, it's a sort of a two-pronged question, because I know in the group chat you were saying to Pauly, look, Pauly, Thursday you got to get him signed. You're getting close to that little deadline with Jadon Sancho.
You guys love making me look like that guy for
Listen, honestly, Pauly, I actually think your theory has a lot of legs in it, and I do think that you might be right on this. I can't believe I said that, guys. I agree with Paul. No, me and Pauly agree. No, but what I'm saying is that look, as each day passes, and this is what I said in the group chat, as each day passes, I think my trust and my hope is dwindling away each day. My soul is getting destroyed each day because, United have a free run at a player. And so, Ciaran, that's the first question I want to ask you is, do you think this deal is going to happen? Are you starting to get worried? And every summer this happens. We know United do have a money problem. Let's be honest. We don't have the budget that other teams can have. And that's understandable. We're in COVID times, but you looked at the figures that were posted around today, and I will let Pauly answer this, and then we'll go to after. I'll let him come back at you about the Glazers. But obviously, you saw the figures that were going around and how much some owners have put into club, and actually, the Glazers have put nothing in the club and taken 80 million out in 89 million out in dividends.
Only West Brom the other team, wasn't it?
The other one, but that was obviously, that wasn't declared properly or something like that. But talk to me about, you think Sanchez is going to happen, and talk to me about that aspect of the club, because that has to come under scrutiny when you looked at the cold hard facts in front of you and those figures.
Yeah, the Sancho one's a difficult one because for most of the transfer window, I've said I think it'll happen, but I think it's going to come down to probably the last week. But the more and more you read about things coming out, it just seems like the two clubs are just not able to agree on any sort of fee. And there's only so long you can wait because, again, like I said earlier, Dortmund aren't just going to sell Sancho on the last couple of days of the window and not have enough time to be able to bring in a replacement. The other side of it is, do Dortmund want to take the risk of, if Sancho really does want the move, of then upsetting one of their highest profile players? So a lot of it comes down to that. But the fact that Sancho hasn't even, he's not agitating for a move. Most players don't. There's only a couple of players that actually do that. But the more and more you read about it, the more it just becomes more unlikely, because a deal like this doesn't just suddenly get agreed between the two clubs. It takes a while, and all the stuff coming out now shows they clearly don't have any agreement in place, nor are they even close to an agreement. United know it's 120 million, but I don't think that, like we said with the finances, and we'll go through that in a few minutes, they don't have the finances to be able to spend 120 million up front for a player. Most clubs don't have that money. Really, you have probably Paris Saint-Germain, City, and maybe Chelsea that can do that in these times. We can't. We can buy a player for 120 million, but you can't have it all up front. And that's the issue. And when it comes to the Glazers and the figures that came out today, it wasn't exactly shocking, because the way that they bought the club, it's always been the same. I don't think there's been a year that they haven't taken dividends out since they've started with the club. So I don't think it should be surprising that they're one of the few clubs that have taken dividends. It's the way it works. At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, it's their business. So if they want to take money out, they can do that. It's the same as if you look at all the big tech giants. Most businesses don't take dividends out. Most of them want to put the money back into the business to allow it to grow. But again, it comes to the owners. If the owners want to take money out, they can. It's just the way it works. It can piss us off as United fans, but at the end of the day, they're businessmen, and at some point in time, they're going to sell the club. It probably won't be for a while, but while they're still the owners, they're going to take it out, because, again, they're not football fans. They're businessmen. Businessmen, when they see a project like this and they feel like they don't have to invest money for United to make money, so they're going to take it out. So that's the big thing. And it's the other thing with Sancho is, and a lot of people said the reason why this is getting held up is because of Joel Glazer, and that could be the reason why. It could be that he doesn't want to spend 120 million because maybe he thinks that, well, he could have asked them, is there anybody else that's available that can replicate the kind of role that Sancho would make and not have to spend all that money? Because, again, it comes down to the business element of it. The family didn't put in the money to buy the club. We've gone through it. We've gone through enough how they bought the club. If the Premier League wouldn't allow that to happen, we saw the same thing with Newcastle. We've seen it with other clubs, even in the Championship and even around Europe, to be honest. The problem is, at the time that the Glazers came in, there was no regulation on how owners could come in and buy clubs. The Premier League have looked at a lot of other sports leagues around the world now, and I've seen that they need to have a set of rules for new ownership to be in place. The unfortunate thing is the timing of when the Glazers took over United, there was no sort of regulation. allowed them to do it. Like I said, this wouldn't happen if they were trying to take over in 2020, but we have to live with it until they eventually do sell the club.
Well, what it is, I mean, it's fantastic points you make, and at the end of the day, it is their club. I don't think the £89 million dividend is something that frustrates me because, like you say, it's a business, and when a business performs well, they give out dividends and they own the club. That's what I don't have a problem with. Pauly, what I have a problem with, and I'm going to come to you, then I'll go to Joe, and then we got to move on swiftly, guys. So a couple of minutes, but look, what I will say is that 838 million that's gone out of the club. We're not saying the Glazers haven't spent, and that's what I want to say. The Glazers have spent 1.2 billion. That's a lot of money, and the sheer wastage and the lack of planning, and that's where the director of football comes in, the management, who you choose as managers. We've got legacy issues. I know you'll expand on that. But the problem is that 838 million, which has gone to interest payments and the debt, could have been put in to extend the stadium. It could have been put in to invest in the infrastructure, make United have the best academy around if you're not going to go and buy the top talent. And it could have allowed you to invest in the area, because that's what Man City have done. They've invested in the community in Manchester. So whether they take dividends is very short-sighted. I don't think we should be worrying about that. 89 million is relatively not a lot of money to United. But the other issues is what I've got a problem with. What have you got to say about that?
No, you're exactly right. That's a frustrating thing. And like Ciaran said, it's their business, and it is what it is. Not investing in the area around Old Trafford. I mean, City's owners have their own little incentive to make them, for PR reasons, to make themselves look better than they are. And they've tried to build themselves into the community, but also because they needed to build a fan base. The City don't have as many fans as United. They don't attract the tourists that Old Trafford attracts. So if you build up that area and make it a nice place where you could spend the day and go to a football match, that's in their best interest. The Glazers, like Ciaran said, they're businessmen. Are they football fans? Maybe, maybe not. But do they care about the area around Old Trafford? No. And for the time being, the stadium keeps generating them money. And all the payments that had to go into interest, that just comes from the way that they took over the club. They put a lot of, the leverage buyout puts a lot of debt on the club, and the interest payments needed to be paid off at the beginning. And they are insanely lucky that they had Sir Alex Ferguson there during those years that they had to make those payments, because they had to make those payments for the first X amount of years. And it coincided that Ferguson left right when they were kind of like, okay, we can actually open up the checkbook now. They did open it up a bit the year before to sign Van Persie. And then they were ready to go. I just, the way that the Glazers are smart people, and Ed Woodward is a smart person. Say what you want about his football knowledge, but you don't get to the place that he got to in the banking world without being a smart person. And they understand if they don't get these deals done, especially the Sancho deal, that will ultimately be bad for them. So because of that, they will get it done. And I think they are trying to make sure that they get a good deal here that also doesn't tie them up long term. You interviewed Kieran Maguire on your podcast. You spoke to him and you said you were going to read his book. I am reading his book. I knew that United's financial situation is bad. It is way worse than that. And there are charts where he literally he shows it that the payments, the transfer fees, the wages were just rising at a much higher level than revenue was and the income was, and it's not sustainable. And you look and you go, oh damn, you're right. This couldn't go on this way. And the Glazers run the club like a business. They want to make sure that there's money going in. They're not willing to beat Roman Abramovich and just write off losses. That's fine. Almost every club is like that now, and they do put a large percentage of the money that comes in back into the club. So they want to make sure that they're doing it smartly, because the fact of the matter is, in the middle of this decade, while they were spending freely, that has ended up impacting them now. And they want to make sure that when they get out of that mess, they don't get back into it.
Yeah, no, you make some very valid points. I mean, look, Joe, I'm going to go on to you for the last word on this before I move on to the head-to-head segment, because that's a great segment. Look, to all the listeners, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get some more views on this video. But look, Joe, what we're seeing though is United we always see this, oh, the revenue's amazing. Look at it. United are generating so much. But I always say that what you see on the pitch and success on the pitch shouldn't be mutually exclusive from commercial success. And we are now 7 years without a title. It could very quickly, look at Liverpool, 30 years. It could very quickly, it's going to be a decade in 3 years' time without a title. And United are not probably close enough to be winning a title. And if United carry on with these fourth place finishes and below, or third place finishes and below, a whole generation of fans will go and become City and Liverpool fans. And United will eventually lose that United built their commercial power and their commercial strength because they were playing such excellent football. There's so many fans around the world that support United because United wowed millions of fans, millions, whether they're from India, whether they're from America, whether they're from the UK. They just wowed everyone because they played incredible football. And on that incredible football and that success, they built this commercial juggernaut. The Glazers, obviously, they took advantage of it. But Joe, talk to me. Are you worried that if United carry on with this focus on commerciality and not on what's going on the pitch, that we will eventually lose that upper hand we have over everyone?
Yeah, I think I've said it a few times before. You can only live off your name for so long. You know what I mean? I think you can only live off that Man United name for so long. And I think it's interesting. You look at Liverpool, and like you say, you could argue, as much as I hate to say it, they're as big a club as us in terms of success over the years. You know, they went that 30 years without winning a title, and I don't feel like when they're shopping in the transfer market, they can shop at that level, if you know what I mean, even now. And I think that's one of the issues with the way the Glazers look at this. They look at success in terms of winning trophies, and just the financial incentive is not there. I mean, let's look at Liverpool. Over the last couple of years, they've won the Champions League and they've won the Premier League. You know, they've had their most successful period in years, and yet they're squabbling over a £30 million deal for Thiago. You know what I mean? So the success that they've had on the pitch, it's obviously not brought them great financial gain, if you know what I mean, or if it did, they wouldn't be in this situation. So I think, you know, that's where United are at in terms of they'll get to a point where, you know, like you said, that if the success doesn't come, they'll not be able to shop at the top market. And then if you can't shop in the top market, you can't buy the best players, and therefore you need the best players to win you things. It's a vicious circle. And, you know, a lot of people just talking about money, a lot of people say we need to improve the stadium. Well, that's all well and good. I look at that stadium. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people make out, by the way. It does look old when you look at some of the newer ones being built. But if United buy a new stadium, or if the Glazers invest in a new stadium, I mean, you can only think what the transfer dealings will be like for the next 5-10 years after that. So that doesn't even bear thinking about. So I think people have to be very careful when they call in for us to improve the infrastructure around Old Trafford. Although it sounds great in our heads, I just feel actually if they did invest money in that, people will get even more frustrated about transfer. Because you think they're lowballing now. Wait and see if they build a stadium. Look at Arsenal. Look at what Tottenham are going to do over the next few years.
Yeah, no, you make great points. Me and Pauly had this discussion today. It's the last one I'm going to say, and we've got to move on to head, guys. We've got 10 minutes left. But what I will say is that me and Pauly did essentially agree that, look, that would have been a great investment. The revenue's been stuck at about 110 million match day revenue for years now. They've done a great thing at not and freezing the season ticket prices. That's a great move by the club. But you're looking at Spurs now. They will generate close. They had 35 million of their match day revenue at the old White Hart Lane. Now it's close to 80, I believe it will be. Obviously, COVID's hamstrung them. But look, that was something United should have done. I don't think it's an option now. And you're right, it probably wouldn't be the best financial option for right now. Anyway, let's move on, guys, to the head-to-head segment. I'm delighted today that we're going to be talking about David De Gea and Dean Henderson. So let's start with Marc, because Marc's been sitting there quietly while we all talk about finance, and he's obviously a bit bored. Let's get down to the real thing, Marc. Marc, you are going to talk about De Gea today. So is Pauly, and then we'll have Joe and Ciaran talking about Henderson. So talk to me why you think David De Gea should retain the number 1 jersey. You have 2 minutes. Go.
I hope I wasn't looking bored. Apologies. So obviously, David De Gea, it's a difficult one for me, this one, but I feel, you've got 2 great goalkeepers there. I think to chuck Henderson in the deep end would be a rash decision, I think there will be many opportunities for him to, he's not been in the first team yet. He's just come back from having 2 great seasons at Sheffield United. and to immediately put him, into the first team consistently, I don't think would be correct. Also, that would upset David De Gea for sure. I know he's made a lot of mistakes especially in this latter season, but we can't, you can't forget that form is temporary and class is permanent. And I do believe that we have got a fantastic keeper in there, in David De Gea. So for me, unless Ollie does have absolute certainty in the fact that he's going to sell him, and whether that might be in January or next summer, probably not until next summer, then I wouldn't do that. I mean, I know Jordan's just signed a big contract, but I don't think that necessarily means that. Sorry, I mean Dean, not Jordan.
Oh, I was about to say,
I was like, what?
Jordan Henderson.
Lay off that line, mate, a little bit, yeah.
Christ. Yeah, I know that Dean's just signed a new contract, but I don't think that necessarily means that he's gonna be jumping straight in. I think that we've got to give. He was great for Spain the other week. He played very well, and there's definitely a lot more to come. I think not necessarily a lot more to come, but usually they don't get past their sort of peak until maybe early 30s, and I still think he's got a couple of years left at least. So I think it would be a bit rash, as soon as I think with Dean coming in, it might be a little bit harder for him. It might be a bit of quite a jump up, and I think that could possibly give him a bit of stage fright, and that could mean he could make mistakes, and then all of a sudden you've got two keepers that are not confident perhaps and are worried, and then what happens then?
Yeah, some great points there, Pauly. What I'm going to level to you is, well, David De Gea for the last 18 months, people are saying, oh, it's just form. I think it's a decline, and when I say it's a decline, look, David De Gea was at an unbelievable level. He was winning United points single-handedly, probably about 15 a season. But what we're seeing is that there is definitely a decline. And I've always said about De Gea, he's a great shot stopper, one of the best I've ever seen. But when you look at his other all-round aspects of his game, you look at the way he commands his box, I don't think it's good enough. With the ball at his feet, I don't think he's not terrible. I think that's overblown, but he's not on the levels of an Alisson or an Ederson. And when you look at the way the United are frustratingly going to be playing out the back, I think it scares the life out of me. I think, is David De Gea still the option for Man United?
Well, when you look at somebody playing the ball out of his feet, does Dean Henderson do it any better? Because that is going to be the tactic, and that is going to be what United are trying to do. You're 100% right that he is declining. Like Marc said, form is temporary, but class is permanent. Can he get back to where he was? It's been 2 years now. He was declining right after the World Cup, and we thought, all right, that was an uncharacteristically bad year for him. Which, bad year for him, not bad, but bad considering the standard that he set at the year before, which was an impossibly high standard. He was never going to replicate that. He didn't improve on it. He was basically the same last season as he was 2 seasons ago, which was again really bad for him, not bad. So can he get back to there? Is this now who he is? Goalkeepers shouldn't be declining at this age. Goalkeepers decline later in life than regular players because there's not as much wear and tear on their legs. So he should be. Will he ever get back to what he did in 2017-18? No, but he should be able to improve on this. And I think he's been complacent the last few years, and it ultimately comes down to this. There is a difference between playing goalkeeper for Sheffield United than there is for Manchester United, and Dean Henderson needs to get experience at that, whether it's in the Cups, maybe even the Champions League group stage, maybe a home match against Brighton, but he should not be out there right from the start because, like Marc said, that is a big blow to David De Gea. And what if Dean Henderson gets some stage fright? Now you have two goalkeepers where you've got questions there. At the end of the day, you go to De Gea. Now he knows I have a legitimate backup threat in Dean Henderson looming over my shoulder. He never felt like that with Sergio Romero. So if he doesn't get his game back and he doesn't improve his form, then you don't have to worry about it because he's not going to be your number one for long.
Yeah, excellent points again. Ciaran, let me go to you before I go to Joe. Look, Dean Henderson's coming back. The boys make some very good points. He playing for Sheffield United, and he had a very good season, but he did make some mistakes, especially sort of the time where they all, where De Gea was making mistakes, and then you see Dean Henderson making it. Playing in front of the Old Trafford faithful, playing in front of Stretford End is much different to playing for Sheffield United. You probably won't get as many saves to make, and you got to be on your game. You got to have that concentration levels up. Is Henderson ready for that? Is he ready to challenge De Gea?
For me, it is, because when you talk about the mistakes that both of them have made, Dean Henderson, as you mentioned, didn't have to, or he had to make a lot more saves than De Gea did. And generally, when the big games came along for Sheffield United, he did play quite well. Now, it's difficult when you're playing for a team that really you're being attacked the majority of the game. It's a completely different animal. I think the good part of this season with not having fans for a while is that whole playing at Old Trafford, playing in front of all these fans kind of goes away, because he's not going to be. The one thing that I've been one of the biggest fans of De Gea. I used to watch him all the time for Atletico before he even came to United. He was one of those players that you would hope that the club would sign. He reminds me, in his terms of his career trajectory, very similar to Wayne Rooney, that they started so early on that it's not. Most goalkeepers come through, and you're seeing it with Henderson now. What is he, 23 and he's coming through? Not many goalkeepers come in, start for the first team at 18, and continue starting for clubs all the way through. So that can be a reason why the decline happened. When we talk about form is temporary, class is permanent, but form, when we talk about temporary, shouldn't be lasting for 2 years. That's when a decline happens. And the problem with De Gea is, you may say he's complacent, but then that goes into his mentality. No, at one of the biggest clubs in the world should be complacent for their starting spot, or that they should be making these big mistakes. Look, goalkeepers are going to make mistakes. It happens. And the problem is that when they do make a mistake, everybody kind of circles in at them, because generally when they make a mistake, it's a goal conceded. The problem is he's making them way too often. And it's not that it's a simple one. You see some of the most basic shots that he should be saving, and he's not. There's also times that his defense bails him out quite a lot when it comes to corners, because the amount of times he goes for the ball and completely misses it. It's one thing that we've been able to kind of cover ever since he's been at Old Trafford, because that first season when teams attacked him from corners, that hasn't gone away. There's a reason why that happens, is because they know he's not comfortable. If you're a goalkeeper at the top club and you can't improve on these things, once the rest of your play starts to decline, these things start to show up again. So that would be my first point. My second point is, we have to look towards what we want to build for the future. Do we want it that De Gea is going to be our goalkeeper for the next 5 or 6 years? I don't believe it. I don't think he's going to be here for that period of time. I don't think he's going to last the rest of his contract that he just signed. While Dean Henderson just signed a 6-year deal, goalkeepers won't. He wasn't going to sign a 6-year deal if he wasn't assured that he's going to be the goalkeeper coming through, or he's going to be the goalkeeper. Maybe if it's not this year, next year, or the year after. But what is going to be sure is that within the next 2 to 3 years, Dean Henderson will be the goalkeeper of Manchester United. It depends on when you think he's ready. For me, who had the better season last season? It was Dean Henderson. They played the same teams. They dealt with the same strikers. And one played for Manchester United that towards the end of the season were dominating most games. And you can say that, well, Dean Henderson played for Sheffield United and he has a lot more to deal with. Well, he still dealt with it. When he played against some of the big teams, he was a reason why Sheffield United were drawing and beating teams like Chelsea, why they were playing well against the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City. You see it now just today. Sheffield United defensively looked worse with Ramsdale in goal. So you have to look at the qualities. The other thing, and it kind of goes with it, at any big club, there should be a meritocracy where whoever has played better deserves to be put in. That's what I always feel. I don't care what your name is. When it came to the end of when Wayne Rooney was there, he was one of our best players for a decade plus. But does that mean he should have started ahead of any upcoming player if you're talking about Martial? No, because if Martial is playing better, he should be put in the side. And that's how I feel. Now, if it comes to the start of the season and De Gea is in, look, I think we can all safely assume that at the beginning of the season, De Gea will probably be put in goal because it's hard to just take him straight out. And Solskjaer does like him. But I think if you're starting to see where when Henderson's playing, you're not really seeing much of a drop-off, and then those mistakes still creep into De Gea's game, I think it's a no-brainer that Henderson should be and is deserving to be able to play. He's given Solskjaer and he's given the club his time. He's gone out happily on loan, signed new contracts with the kind of promise that he's going to be given a chance. If he performs better than De Gea, or even to a certain level playing field, personally, I'd be starting Henderson because, number one, he's the future of the club. And at the end of the day, he actually wants to be here. Don't get it wrong. If it wasn't for that fax machine, De Gea would not be here for the last few. At those two things, if performances are pretty similar or Henderson's been a little bit better, I think we can't just say, well, De Gea has been a great servant to the club. I think you need to look for the future and who's going to be that goalkeeper. And for me, it's Dean Henderson.
Yeah, you make some great points there. And Joe, I'm going to come on to you. Look, there's two things I will say to that, because Ciaran's made some very good points. You know, you shouldn't be picking someone because of who their name is. You should actually be looking at the form. But two things. One, United gave Henderson such a big contract, 120k a week for what? He hasn't played one game at United. And this feeds into the problem that we have at Man United, where we have so many players who probably won't start, the likes of Jones and Lingard. I'm not saying Henderson on that level, but what's he done to deserve 120k a week? That's more than the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Alisson, people like that who have won the Premier League title. The second point I'll make is he's had one season in the Premier League. We know that keepers have longevity. So why do you think Henderson should be United's number one?
For me, the reason he should be number one, and Ciaran's covered everything there. I don't know if there's a lot I can sort of add to it in terms of, I'm not going to really shoot stats at you, but one of the things that concerns me with Dave starting is these first few games of the season. I think now, for the first time, Dave knows he's got some genuine competition on the bench. And I have certain question marks over his ability to perform under pressure. I think sometimes when we've seen him make mistakes, he's gone on and made more mistakes. That's because he knows he's under the microscope. And I think if he starts in goal this season, I think his performances are really good under the microscope. And if he does make some mistakes early on, then obviously not only is he under the microscope, but it'll cost us points as well. So the other thing I want to say as well is I think United have been quite fortunate over the last few years to have goalkeepers, number twos, that have been happy to be number two. We've had Romero there, who's been brilliant, to be fair. He knows his role. He's happy to settle for it, and he's just got on with it. And some people have said he's probably the best number two in the world. Now, I'm not sure about that, because actually as a keeper, sometimes I've seen him play, and I'm not overly convinced by Romero, but why he is one of the best number twos in the world is because he's happy to do it and he doesn't kick up. Now, I happen to have a friend who is a season ticket at Grimsby Town, believe it or not. And I don't know if you know, but Grimsby Town was the first loan that Dean Henderson had. And there's a goalkeeper at Grimsby who's been there for 6-7 years, and he was very established. And Dean Henderson went in the January on loan there and found it very difficult to break in, because obviously this keeper was a favourite at the club and everything like that. And he didn't go quietly, and it ended up getting really messy between him and the manager. And I think the loan sort of was cut short quite early. It should have been till the end of the season, and he ended up coming back quite early. So I think what United are going to find this year is they're not going to have a keeper that's going to settle for cup games here or there. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to make sure that they give him a certain amount of games. And the issue with that then is you get the situation where you're going to flip-flop between goalkeepers, and I never think that that's ideal either. A goalkeeper is something that should be nailed down for me. So I think Henderson is not going to stick around and be a number two forever. So United have to make a decision, and as far as I'm concerned, it'd be easier making that decision now, because if they just keep him on the bench for the year, they're going to have an unhappy goalkeeper, and he's going to be the type of goalkeeper that's going to make his feelings known, if you know what I mean. And I think it could become a problem for Solskjaer. And one last thing I do want to say about Henderson is, to be fair to him, his career's going in the right trajectory. I mean, he obviously started off at Grimsby, like I say. Didn't really work out for him there, although when he did play, he did okay. And then he went to Shrewsbury. And I mean, that season he went to Shrewsbury Town, they were the favourites to be relegated. He actually he helped them get to a playoff final. You then look at what he did at Sheffield United. He was a massive part of why they got promoted. And for me, when you look at his performance last year, he was a massive part of why Sheffield United had such a great season. So I think his career trajectory is on the right path. And I think United owe it to one of their own not to stunt that growth, if you know what I mean.
Some fantastic points. Guys, I'm going to make my decision. And this is a tough one because it's a very tough one. I'll go with what I think is going to happen. I think you'll see David De Gea in the net, and I think he'll have a better season. But I feel like maybe it's time that United try and phase him out and look to bring Henderson in. So I'm going to have to go with Henderson for it, guys. So it's 1-1 in the head-to-heads, guys. Okay, look, we've gone over time today, so I'm going to go to each one of you and just tell me your score prediction for the Palace game, because we are actually playing a game this week, and who your first scorer is. I'm going to go for 2-0 United, and I'm going to go for 1 Anthony Martial. Go on, Mark. Who do you think is going to score first, and what's your score prediction?
I was going to say 3-0 as well, and I was going to say Martial, but now I'm going to say Greenwood.
Okay, I said 2-0, so it's nice to know you're listening.
That's all right then.
Go on, Ciaran.
I'm going to go with 3-1, and I'm just going to play it safe now. I was going to go with Greenwood, but I'm going to go with Bruno.
Nice. Probably a penalty. It's
yeah.
Go on, Pauly, what are you saying?
Yeah, you guys have all stolen mine. I'm going to go 3-0, and seeing as watching the Liverpool and Chelsea and all the other matches with all the penalties, we're going Bruno Fernandes.
Nice. And Joe, last but not least?
I think this is the type of game where United will win it by plenty, and everybody will say, oh, look, we don't need this and we don't need that. We've had lots of false hope on opening days before. So let's not fall into that trap. I'm going to go for 4-1, and I think Jadon Sancho will get the first goal. No, I don't. No, I think it'll be 4-1. But I think what will happen is I think, like the boys, I can see it being a penalty, and I can just hear the commentators saying now United picking up where they finished off last season. So yeah, I think it'll be a penalty. Bruno will jump 6 feet into the air and just roll it in the bottom corner. So
either that or like Lindelof will hit it in on a corner.
yeah, maybe, yeah. Or maybe Henderson might score from a goal kick or something. You don't know.
Let's hope maybe can happen. Opening goal.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful. Anyway, thank you guys. I know we've gone a bit over time, but to all the listeners, please hit that like button, that subscribe button. Thank you for listening to episode 3 of Red Devils Talk. We'll be back next week to review the fixtures and obviously preview the next week's fixtures. Thank you guys for joining me, all of you, and we will see you